There is a certain decade that the British people will never forget. The 1960s were not just a time of change, they were a time of confidence, creativity, and extraordinary national pride. Britain was building things that the world wanted to see, touch, and own. The factories were alive, the designers were dreaming bigger than ever, and the engineers were pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And at the very heart of that pride sat the British motor car. These were not simply machines with wheels and engines. They were statements. They told the world that Britain had something to say, and the world was listening. Today on Britain Rewind, we are counting down 10 British cars that made Britain proud in the 1960s. Each one carried the spirit of a nation on its bonnet. And the car at number 1 wasn't just admired, it became a true legend. Number 10. Triumph Herald. In the 1960s, this was a car that brought a smile to the faces of ordinary British families, and that was something to be genuinely proud of. The Triumph Herald was designed by Giovanni Michelotti, but it was built in Coventry, and it carried the soul of British motoring in every curve and line. What made it special was its accessibility. It was a car that working families could afford, that young drivers could aspire to, and that women across Britain were driving with confidence and independence. The Herald had a full turning circle smaller than almost any other car on the road, making it practical and clever. People admired it not because it was the fastest or the most expensive, but because it was thoughtfully made and genuinely useful. This wasn't just a car, it was Britain looking after its own people. But the next car took British engineering in a far more spirited direction. Number 9. Austin Healey 3000. At the time, if you wanted to see what British passion looked like in mechanical form, you only had to look at the Austin Healey 3000. This was a sports car built in the heart of England, and it became one of the most celebrated open-top touring cars in the world. Its long bonnet, low stance, and unmistakable presence made it a car that people stopped to watch as it passed. The 3000 was raced competitively across Europe and regularly performed at the highest levels of international rallying, bringing home victories that made Britain stand tall. It was driven by enthusiasts who understood that this car represented something deeper than transport, it represented British confidence and craftsmanship. People admired it for its combination of elegance and raw energy. This wasn't just a car, it was Britain wearing its heart on its sleeve. But the next car brought British design to a completely different audience. Number 8. Sunbeam Tiger. Britain has always known how to create something unexpected, and the Sunbeam Tiger was exactly that, a pleasant surprise that turned into a source of genuine national pride. Taking the already stylish Sunbeam Alpine body and fitting it with a powerful V8 engine, the Tiger was a car that combined British elegance with serious performance. It was exported to America in considerable numbers, where it earned enormous respect and admiration. For a British car to compete in the American market and succeed was no small achievement. It told the world that Britain could build something exciting enough to satisfy even the most demanding drivers. Back home, people were proud to know that this little British car was being celebrated across the Atlantic. This wasn't just a car, it was Britain making its mark far beyond its own shores. But the next car brought a different kind of dignity to Britain's roads. Number 7. Rover P5. There are cars that inspire excitement, and then there are cars that inspire deep, quiet respect. The Rover P5 was firmly in the second category, and Britain was proud of it for exactly that reason. This was the car of choice for prime ministers, senior government figures, and the most respected professionals in the country. It carried a sense of authority and refinement that very few cars in the world could match at the time. The P5's interior was beautifully crafted, its ride was smooth and composed, and its presence on the road commanded attention without ever demanding it loudly. It became a symbol of British institutional dignity. People saw it and understood that it represented something serious and trustworthy. This wasn't just a car, it was Britain's sense of proper, dependable excellence made visible. But the next car showed the world that Britain could also be light, precise, and brilliantly clever. Number 6. Lotus Elan. Colin Chapman was one of the most brilliant automotive minds Britain ever produced. And the Lotus Elan was one of his finest achievements. At the time, this small, lightweight sports car shocked the motoring world with its handling, its precision, and its sheer technical intelligence. Chapman believed that the best way to go faster was not to add more power, but to remove unnecessary weight, and the Elan proved that philosophy was correct. It was a car that felt alive in your hands, responding to every input with extraordinary sensitivity. Drivers who experienced it described it as nothing less than magical. The Elan was exported globally and received with tremendous admiration. For Britain, it was proof that the country's engineers were not just competent, they were visionary. This wasn't just a car, it was Britain thinking differently and winning because of it. But the next car combined beauty and strength in a way that became truly iconic. Number 5. Jaguar M2. Few cars in British history have managed to be both deeply beautiful and genuinely fast at the same time. The Jaguar M2 achieved exactly that, and in the 1960s, it became one of the most admired and respected cars on British roads. Its graceful lines, its wide glass area, and its wonderfully appointed interior made it feel like a car that belonged to a higher world, and yet it was quick enough to embarrass far more expensive machines. It was the preferred car of bank managers and doctors, but it was also the vehicle of choice for a certain type of colorful character who appreciated performance alongside elegance. The Mark II was exported in large numbers and celebrated internationally. Britain was proud to have produced something this beautiful and capable. This wasn't just a car, it was British grace combined with quiet, confident power. But the next car brought British engineering to the very doorstep of motorsport greatness. Number 4. The Mini Kooper S. If there is one car that truly captured the spirit of 1960s Britain, the energy, the creativity, the willingness to challenge convention, it was the Mini Kooper S. Alec Isigonis designed the original Mini as a practical, affordable solution to Britain's post-war needs, but John Cooper saw something more in it. He saw a racing car. And he was right. The Mini Kooper S went on to win the Monte Carlo Rally multiple times, beating far larger and more powerful competitors from across Europe. The entire nation felt a surge of pride each time it crossed the finish line. Back on British streets, the Mini had already become a cultural icon. Everyone drove one or knew someone who did. It belonged to Britain in a way very few cars ever have. This wasn't just a car, it was Britain's personality given 4 wheels and sent out to conquer the world. But the next car operated at an entirely different level of prestige and global recognition. Number 3. Aston Martin DB4 GT. By the early 1960s, Aston Martin had already established itself as one of the most revered names in British motoring, and the DB4 GT was the car that cemented that reputation beyond all doubt. Built in small numbers at the Newport Pagnell factory in Buckinghamshire, the DB4 GT was handcrafted to an extraordinary standard. Every panel, every component, and every detail reflected the dedication of the men and women who built it. It competed at Le Mans and on circuits across Europe, carrying the British flag with immense distinction. To own one was to possess something genuinely rare and genuinely exceptional. To see one was to understand that Britain was capable of producing automotive art. The world looked at the DB4 GT and recognized instantly that it came from a country with extraordinary taste and extraordinary skill. This wasn't just a car, it was Britain at its most refined and most magnificent. But the car at number 2 changed what the world expected from a British sports car forever. Number 2. Lotus Cortina. The Lotus Cortina was the result of one of the most inspired partnerships in British automotive history. Ford's practical, everyday Cortina combined with Lotus's extraordinary engineering talent to produce something that was both accessible and devastatingly effective. Jim Clark, one of the greatest racing drivers the world has ever seen, drove the Lotus Cortina to numerous victories, bringing enormous prestige and excitement to what had started as a sensible family car. The sight of a Lotus Cortina at full speed, its inside rear wheel famously lifting off the ground, became one of the defining images of British motorsport in the 1960s. Ordinary people felt connected to something brilliant when they saw it race. This wasn't just a car. It was proof that Britain could transform the ordinary into the extraordinary with vision and engineering genius. And now, the moment you have been waiting for. The car at number 1. Number 1. Jaguar E-Type. There are very few moments in history when something is created that genuinely stops the world in its tracks. The Jaguar E-Type was one of those moments, and Britain can be forever proud that it happened here. When the E-Type was unveiled in 1961, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Enzo Ferrari, a man who built some of the most celebrated cars in existence, reportedly called it the most beautiful car ever made. That single statement echoed around the world, and Britain stood a little taller because of it. The E-Type's long, sweeping bonnet, its aerodynamic body, and its extraordinary performance made it unlike anything that had come before it. It could reach speeds that challenged the fastest cars in the world, and it did so with a grace and elegance that no other manufacturer could match. It was sold across America, celebrated across Europe, and admired everywhere it appeared. Racing drivers wanted to race it. Film directors wanted to feature it in their work. Young people everywhere dreamed of owning one. But beyond the glamour and the global recognition, the E-Type meant something deeply personal to the British people. It was evidence that their country, a country rebuilding itself, reimagining itself, and believing in itself, was capable of producing genuine greatness. The E-Type was not just the finest British car of the 1960s. It was a legend that belongs to history itself. The 1960s were a golden era for British motoring. From the practical ingenuity of the Mini to the breathtaking elegance of the E-Type, Britain produced cars that were not simply modes of transport, they were expressions of national character, creativity, and pride. These cars were driven by ordinary people and extraordinary champions alike. They won races, crossed oceans, and earned the admiration of the entire world. And even today, decades later, the sight of one of these machines on the road still stirs something deep and genuine in the hearts of people who love Britain and everything it has given the world. Which one of these cars made you the most proud? Tell us in the comments below, we would love to hear from you. Until next time.